Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with part 20, Fraternity of Builders of Continental Europe, of the Origin of Freemasonry and Knights Templar by John R. Bennett. Fraternity of Builders or Freemasons of Continental Europe. Germany. It is universally admitted that in the early stages of Christianity, the clergy alone were the patrons of arts and sciences. This was because all learning was then almost exclusively confined to ecclesiastics. Very few of the laity could read or write. Even kings affixed the sign of the cross in place of their signatures to the charters and other documents which they issued. And from the time of Charlemagne in the 8th century to the middle of the 12th, all knowledge and practice of architecture, painting, and sculpture were exclusively confined to the monks, and bishops personally superintended the erection of the churches and cathedrals in their dioceses, because not only the principles but the practice of the art of building were secrets kept within the walls of cloisters and were unknown to laymen. Many of the founders of the monastic orders made it a peculiar duty for the monks to devote themselves to architecture and church building. In the year 716 AD, the English monk Saint Boniface went into Germany and organized a special class of monks for the practice of building under the name of operati, or craftsmen, and magistri operum, or masters of the works. The labors and duties of these monks were divided and under the same system or organization as the Roman colleges of artificers. Some of them designed the plan of the building. Others were painters and sculptors, and then there were those who were called commentari or stone masons, who performed the practical labors of construction. In large buildings where many workmen were required, laymen were employed under the direction of the monks. Among the laymen who were employed in the monasteries as assistants and laborers, many were possessed of superior intelligence. The constant and intimate association of these with the monks in the prosecution of the same design led to this result, that in the process of time, gradually and almost unconsciously, the monks imparted to them the art, secrets, and principles of architecture. Then, by degrees, the knowledge of arts and sciences went from these monkish builders out into the world, and the layman architects, withdrawing from the ecclesiastical fraternities, organized brotherhoods of their own. These independent brotherhoods now began to be called upon wherever an important building was to be erected, and eventually they entirely superseded the monkish teachers in the prosecution of the art of building. But now a new classification took place. The more intelligent of the laymen, who had received these secrets from the monks, were designated as architects from the ordinary laborers or common masons. The latter knew only the use of the trowel and mortar, while the former were occupied in devising plans for building. These brotherhoods of high artists soon won great esteem, and many privileges and franchises were conceded to them by the municipal authorities among whom they practiced their profession. Their places of assembly were called lodges, and the members took the name of Freemasons. Their patron saint was Saint John the Baptist, who was honored by them as the mediator between the Old and the New Covenants, and the first martyr of the Christian religion. Such was the beginning of the brotherhoods of Masons in Germany. The most important event in the cultivation and spread of Masonic art on the continent of Europe was that which occurred at the city of Strasbourg in Germany, when Erwin of Steinbach, the architect of the cathedral, summoned a great number of master builders out of Germany, England, and Italy, and in the year 1275 established a code of regulations and organized the Fraternity of Freemasons after the mode which had been adopted 350 years before by the English Masons at the city of York. 3 grades of workmen were recognized: masters, fellow crafts, and apprentices. and words, signs, and grips were created as modes of recognition to be used by the members of the fraternity, a part of which was borrowed from the English Masons. Finally, ceremonies of initiation were invented, which were of a symbolic character and concealed under their symbolism profound doctrines of philosophy, religion, and architecture. Lodges were then established in many of the cities of Germany, all of which fraternized with each other. They admitted many eminent persons, and especially ecclesiastics, who were not operative Masons, but who gave to them their patronage and protection. A Grand Lodge was established at the city of Strasbourg, and Erwin of Steinbach was elected their presiding officer or Grand Master. These fraternities or associations became at once very popular. Many of the potentates of Europe conceded to them considerable powers of jurisdiction, such as would enable them to preserve the most rigid system in matters pertaining to building, and would facilitate them in bringing workmen together at any required point. They continued to exist without interruption until 1707, when a decree of the Imperial Diet at Ratisbon dissolved the connection of the lodges of Germany with the Grand Lodge of Strasbourg, because that city had in 1687 passed into the power of the French. The head now lost, the subordinate bodies began rapidly to decline, and in 1731, by an imperial edict of Charles I, nearly all the lodges in Germany were dissolved and lost sight of until the restoration of the order in the 18th century through the English fraternity. France. In the beginning of the 10th century, a fraternity of architects was founded in France and was similar to that of their German brethren, originating like them from the cloisters and from the employment of laymen by the monkish architects. The connection between the Masons of France and the Roman colleges of artificers was more intimate and direct than that of the Germans, because of the early and very general occupation of Gaul by the Roman legions. But the French organizations did not materially differ from the Germans, protected by popes and princes. The Masons were engaged under ecclesiastical patronage in the construction of religious edifices. The principal seat of the French fraternity was at Como, a city of Lombardy, from where the lodges were disseminated over the kingdom and who passed from country to country and from city to city under the name of traveling Freemasons. In the beginning of the 16th century, the necessity for their employment in further construction of religious edifices having ceased, the fraternity began to decline, and finally in the year 1539, they were dissolved by an edict of Francis I, King of France, and ceased to exist as a recognized system until its revival in the 18th century through the English fraternity. Italy. In Italy, the Association of Architects never entirely ceased to exist, but the greater number of them became connected with the fraternities at France at Como and were lost sight of. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.